Good morning, all. Thank you for coming to today's meeting. Today is January 31st, 2025. Devin, do we have a quorum for today's meeting?
We do.
Can you please take the roll for us?
Dr. Bolton?
Here.
Dr. Cow?
Here.
Alex Chan?
Yes, here.
Kareem Gangora? Kareem Gangora? Larry Kaplan?
Here.
Paul Kramer?
Here.
Alex Lawrence?
Here.
Esther Lynn? Justice Macy Walla? Bethany Peak? Ashley Silva Guzman?
Here.
Judge Reyna? Vince Reyes? Alan Yokelson? We have a quorum.
Thank you, Devin. Before we begin, as the chair, I am deeply saddened by the devastating wildfires in Los Angeles and the surrounding areas. The day I learned about the wildfires, I immediately contacted Audrey and the staff, and they quickly put together an announcement regarding support from the State Bar. My thoughts are with everyone affected, and I know some of the staff and also CBE members who are also facing hardship during this time. And in particular, my heart goes out to Dr. Bolton. Thank you for coming today. I don't have any words other than thank you for being here. And, you know, the committee and I recognize the challenges ahead of you. And we want to assure you that both the committee and the State Bar are here to help you to the fullest extent. We are very much like a family. You've been on the committee for more years than I've been, and so you're part of us. And so I want you to know that we are here, you know, for whatever that you need, and also for the public at large as well. If you know, if you are or you know someone who may require assistance, please don't hesitate to contact me, Audrey, or Bridget. Our committee, as well as the State Bar, we are ready to provide any guidance and resources to help you navigate during this challenging time. This includes, obviously, our February exam applicants who live in the LA areas. And if you are or you have negatively been impacted by the wildfires and you haven't already done so, please either contact us or email us at wildfires.emergencies@calbar.gov. And this email address is on the website. Later today, the committee will also be discussing an agenda item regarding an amendment to our refund policy. It's not much, but I certainly it's a first step in the right direction to provide some relief to all those who may need applicants, and I trust that the committee will do everything within the power to help the February bar exam applicants. So with that as background, if any committee member wants to make a quick comment, you're welcome to do so. Otherwise, Devin, do we have any public commenters who would like to make a public comment?
We do. Our first public comment will be from Benjamin Cohn.
Hello, thank you. I want to first address a comment responsive to my comment that was made by Cody Honanian. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. At the last meeting, the statistics regarding what accommodation percentages were granted of those processed for the bar exam experiment is interesting and helpful to know. However, it does not address my concern that when the bar exam experiment was announced and the time that was available from that announcement for new petitions for accommodations from applicants who only had that limited notice to know that there was a grading incentive opportunity that would be based on performance to apply for accommodations, the time would not allow for, under your standard procedures, first time accommodation requests to be processed. So yes, I'm sure that there were plenty of accommodations approved and provided on the bar exam experiment for applicants who already had petitions for the bar exam, who got approvals for earlier bar exams or had that pending for the next bar exam from before the bar exam experiment was announced. Maybe there were even some first-time requests for the bar exam experiment that were based on requests approved on a prior high-stakes exam that were within your eligibility, that were approved quicker. But the statistics would not have reflected the people who of what percentage were granted of what were not processed and caused those applicants to withdraw, or what were still reading in the system is pending internal review at the time of the bar exam experiment. And because you didn't apply the proper timelines for when the standard conditions and the existence of that exam was announced, plenty of applicants with disabilities had no opportunity to qualify for the bar exam experiment with accommodations, which affected their willingness to take it or their performance and their eligibility ultimately for that 40-point grading incentive. I also want to address that I got records about Measure's contract that are now suggesting you've contracted away the ability to approve certain accommodations as close to the within 30 days of the exam, which a lot of the timelines are not. That would not be a basis to claim undue burden for those accommodations, that the contract doesn't require Measure to provide them within 30 days of the exam. That means you have to provide them through a different vendor if you're not deciding those within that and you want to have those contractual terms. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn.
Our next public comment is from Ray Hayden.
There you go. I must say Benjamin Cohn is like right there on that last second. That was awesome. So anyways, the huge elephant in the room here is bandwidth. My fear, based on the experiences that other people are having and reporting back to me on actually all three. The experimental exam was a bit of a nightmare for folks, but I know CalBar went to work on that right away, as they would have. The mock exam was a bit of a problem for a number of folks, and I'm certain that CalBar went right back on it and jumped on that again. The third one is what I experienced yesterday. I got the emails that said, hey, schedule your exam. I said, okay, sure will. So I went into the same system I did before for the experimental and the mock, or I think it was for the experimental, but definitely the mock exam, where I could schedule the exam. Now I figure we're all there at the exact same time, and we're all there in the exact same day, and I'm taking the 2 days, so I'm doing the same exact exam, and we all are at the same time, California Pacific time. Well, they asked me to do my time zone, which is the Eastern time zone, because I am the Florida guy y'all talk about. That's me. And I did indeed say, hey, I'm in the Eastern time zone, and the 25th is the only day that was available on the little calendar they give you, which makes sense. Then it offered me an option of times. I'm like, oh, look at this. It's great. I can pick whenever I want to start the exam. I can start 2 hours before California. Nah, you really can't. So I Googled it because now I'm confused. I'm like, why would they offer me an option of times? That's almost stupid, in my opinion. That's being nice. But so I Googled it and it said, hey, the exam starts at 9 o'clock. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. I've never had a bar exam. I've been at 12 of these things with the 6 first-year exams and 6 California bar exams. They never started at 9. And we had to be there even earlier. For in-person especially, but lo and behold, I go back to the FAQs and I unfortunately find the word sample, as in the time that's going to be happening. And I noticed something else a little bit worse in there, but here's the deal. It says 8 o'clock. So I'm like, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, which one is it? I'm going with what CalBar put out, and so I asked for 8 o'clock, which is 11 o'clock Eastern, because 3 hours difference. So I'm starting at the exact same time as everybody else. The problem is when we all go in there with all that bandwidth at once, if they don't do something about it and get that secured beforehand and they have the bandwidth on the receiving end, it's probably going to have a hiccup or two, if not crash and burn. I'm hoping that it gets by pretty well. And the live proctors have been able to get people in, but still some people, and the number they go for is 0 people, we're still having problems. The other problem I see is I noticed that some people were not getting into their mock thing at the same times. Basically, it took 20 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 10 minutes there. That's a problem too. There's a whole bunch of different reasons why that happens, but the daily schedule is almost an impossibility simply because of the varying times that people take to get back in to the exam. And bandwidth is going to be a huge part of that. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Our next public comment is from Robert Morelli.
Hey, good morning. So as an attorney test taker, I just want to say that I'm extremely disappointed with how Measure has been handling this. Specifically, what I'm referring to is how the test centers are being selected and allocated. So as you know, yesterday we were supposed to receive an email where we would select our test centers, enter a zip code and select our test centers. Well, I, along with plenty of other people, have not received that email. We've reached out to Measure, and they have said several things. They've said that they're not responsible for sending that email. They've sent us to their customer support, which we've emailed, and they have not responded or given us any guidance. And then third, they said that the California Bar is responsible for assigning those test centers, which is, opposite of everything that we've been told in throughout this entire process. So my comments are really just a few questions related to that is, what do we do related to get those test centers assigned with a Monday deadline coming up? Will that Monday deadline be extended? And what does the bar plan to do to address these deficiencies with Measure? It's extremely disappointing to see, the organization handle such an important test like that. Thank you.
Our next public comment is from Jessica.
Hello. At your last meeting, this committee made a decision regarding my participation in the law office study program. However, I recently learned the committee lacked crucial information, which have since provided to Alex and Devin and Audrey, and I want to share publicly. These critical points show why granting me credit for completed study sessions is necessary to uphold the State Bar's mission and support all law office study participants. For over 4.5 years, I've met every fundamental requirement of Rule 4.29. My present issue of a missed deadline to change my supervising attorney lies with the State Bar in its administrative delays, unclear guidelines, and miscommunications that actually made it impossible for me to comply with the procedural timeline. First, the procedure to change supervising attorneys, central to my case, is not clearly articulated anywhere in the law office study guidelines. The only reference appears in a related links list at the bottom of a State Bar website in a frequently asked questions link. Notably, this information there conflicts entirely with what Ms. Dole from admissions sent me this month, a screenshot of printed language that's different. In fact, 2 official registration letters that confirmed my participation in the program back in 2020 provide links to all the program requirements. None of these explain how to change a supervising attorney. In contrast, the sister PTLS program prominently displays its change of supervisor procedure on its program description page, and they pay $35 for this change, where law office study participants are charged $880 for the same service. In 2023, my emails and calls to the admissions office went unanswered for 8 months following staff turnover, specifically the retirement of Natalie Hope. And when Selena Flores clarified the process in April 2024, a year too late, I immediately complied. And had this clarification occurred sooner, and there were multiple times it should have, including a very specific written request that went unanswered, I would have submitted my final study session by now and been preparing for the upcoming bar exam. I recently learned that this committee was not aware of several factors when deciding my case. One, that Natalie Hope explicitly told me I could not submit my study sessions 4 through 6 unless study sessions 2 and 3 were credited. And she even provided a procedural rationale for this, ironically also found in that frequently asked questions link. That it took 16 months to credit those sessions 2 and 3 after submission, so it was impossible for me to timely submit the subsequent ones. And most importantly, that the 2022 CBE recommendations in answer to the Supreme Court directive proposed not only to reduce the fee from $880 to $35, but also recommended, and I quote, clarifying the change of supervisor procedure. Had these recommendations been implemented, I would not be fighting for credit for completed work. Circumstances beyond my control should not hinder my success in this program, and it's no coincidence that only 43 people in 10 years have become attorneys through the law office study program. In my recent conversations with both Ms. Dole and Mr. Zuniga, the public trust liaison, it seems like things are looking up with Audrey Ching at the helm. I definitely have noticed a difference, and I was happy to see this on today's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
We do not have any additional online public comments, and I do not see any in-person public comments.
Okay. Well, if there are no additional public comments, let's move on to the open session.
Mr. Chair, quick question.
Yes.
We had a commenter comment on one of our processes. Are we discussing that today or?
Audrey?
About which part? The exam
the
or
last,
the last? That
the
is not
last.
agendized today.
Okay. All right. Is it something we could discuss or it has to be agendized?
It has to be agendized to
agendized
discuss.
according to
So,
the rules.
yeah, we can agendize it for the next meeting.
If you can, please. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Audrey.
Thank you, Ms. Ngora. Let's move on to the open session and go through the agenda items. Agenda item number 1, Chair's report. I would like to take a moment today to acknowledge one of our longtime members, Mr. Robert Brody, who formally resigned from the Committee of Bar Examiners, as some of you may know, in December of 2024. He's a dear colleague to mine. He's almost like a brother to me, as many of you know. And I just want to commend for his outstanding service and his numerous contributions during his tenure here within this committee. For 8 years now, he has been an instrumental and very, very valuable member of this committee. He served as the chair, and he also served as the vice chair of different subcommittees over time, as well as his work on the Kappa working group, which many of you know really did a lot of contributions to the study that underlied the decision by the Blue Ribbon Commission. His thoughtful, his measured approach has been instrumental in guiding us through numerous policy decisions. His contributions has been more than significant in my view, and I am truly, truly grateful for his expertise and leadership. I don't know if he's watching. If he's watching, I just want to say that you will be missed. And because of that, please, members of the committee, please join me in giving Robbie a warm round of applause for his outstanding service. Now, a little housekeeping. The agenda has the committee moving to discuss the work plan next, but I'm going to move that discussion to the end of the open session, right before the brief report from the director. So we'll actually be starting with the approval of the minutes, which is item 2.1. One more note for the public. The committee will be breaking for lunch at noon, so if you want to plan ahead, the plan is to break for lunch for an hour starting at noon. So agenda item 2.1, approval of the December 6, 2024 open session minutes. First, any questions or comments about the minutes? Hearing none, need someone to call for a motion?
This is Mike. I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Dr. Cow. Second? Anyone? Second. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Any discussion or debates? Hearing none, Devin will call roll.
Dr. Bolton? Yes. Dr. Cow?
Yes.
Kareem Gangora?
Yes.
Larry Kaplan?
Yes.
Paul Kramer?
Yes.
Alex Lawrence?
Yes.
Esther Lynn? Justice Macy Walla? Bethany Peak? Ashley Silva Guzman?
Yes.
Judge Reyna?
Yes.
Vince Reyes? Alan Yokelson?
Yes.
Alex Chan?
Yes.
With 10 yeses and 0 nos, the motion passes.
Thank you, Devin. Move on to agenda item 2.2, approval of the amendment to the September 30th, 2024 open session minutes. We had a revision to the minutes, which is that the agenda item number was changed from 3.1 to 1.1. So nothing substantive in that sense. Any questions or comments about this change? Hearing none, I need someone to call for a motion, please.
This is Michael. Make the motion.
Thank you, Dr. Cal.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Any discussion or debates? Hearing none, Devin, please take the roll.
Dr. Bolton?
Yes.
Dr. Cow?
Yes.
Kareem Gangora? Larry Kaplan?
Yes.
Paul Kramer?
Yes.
Alex Lawrence?
Yes.
Esther Lynn? Justice Macy Walla? Bethany Peak? Ashley Silva Guzman?
Yes.
Judge Reyna?
Abstain.
Vince Reyes? Alan Yokelson? Alan, I think you're muted.
Yes.
Thank you. Alex Chan?
Yes.
With 10 yeses and 0 nos, the motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to our consent calendar, agenda item number 3, or 3.1 now, report on updates regarding law schools. Natalie, do you have any report for us? I'm sorry, can you put on, okay. Oh, okay.
We have only the consent calendar today, Chair. So if there's no further discussion, we may move the motion.
Sounds good. Along with that, item number 3.2, which is the approval of report to the Supreme Court on the July 2024 California bar examination. And thank you, Ms. Leonard, for reminding us. The consent calendar is voted on and approved as an omnibus item. And so unless any member of the committee has a question, I need someone to call for a motion, please.
I'll call the motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
This is Michael. Second the motion.
Thank you, Dr. Cow. Any discussion or debate on either agenda item? Hearing none. Devin, please.
Dr. Bolton?
Yes.
Dr. Cow?
Yes.
Kareem Gangora?
Yes.
Larry Kaplan?
Yes.
Paul Kramer?
Yes.
Alex Lawrence?
Yes.
Esther Lynn? Justice Macy Walla? Bethany Peak? Ashley Silva Guzman?
Yes.
Judge Reyna?
Yes.
Vince Reyes? Alan Yokelson? Alex Chan?
Yes.
With 10 yeses and 0 nos, the motion passes.
Thank you, Devin. Moving on to agenda item number 4. For the committee, I know we have withdrawn a couple of items, and that's vastly because we want to prioritize our time on something a little more critical. And so for those items that have been withdrawn, we will be bringing them back at the next meeting. First item is 4.1, discussion and action on composition and charter of the steering committee to guide the development of the new California bar exam. We have a report from Bridget and Audrey. Ladies?
Thank you. So I apologize, I don't have, excuse me, I couldn't get my slides to work here this morning, but I will just kind of walk through what's in the agenda item that you've already seen. This is a follow-up discussion from from December, if you recall. The court, just to kind of bring everybody up to speed, the Supreme Court did issue an order for us to develop a brand new California bar exam. And staff's proposal for how we might implement that is to start with the steering committee. We spoke last meeting about who might serve on that committee, what the composition might look like to get that started. And so what in the intervening time since that, staff have been consulting with multiple different psychometricians, people who have worked across the country and even in other countries on licensure exams for understanding best practices. How did they get this going to revamp a new exam? And what they have recommended is really a smaller in size steering committee itself, coupled with an advisory committee that can make sure that all of the different perspectives are being accounted for, that the decision makers are hearing from all the different contingencies of the people that you all recommended last time. If you remember, we had like a brainstorming session. Who else do we need to hear from when we're investigating this new exam? And so what I've put together in consultation with the chair and CBE leadership and our other stakeholders is a proposal that would be a smaller steering committee. It would be 9 voting members, and then that steering committee can advise and CBE can appoint at the later time once the steering committee gets going a parallel advisory committee that will be working, and then CBE can be appointing those people so that you all can stay in the loop on what's going on and ensuring that the steering committee is being appropriately advised. So maybe the easiest way, Devin, if you have the resolution, I think I have the proposed breakdown right in that resolution. We can put that up on the screen for the discussion. But just I'll summarize. So the proposal is that there would be a chair that would be ideally a current or retired member of the judiciary. That chair would be appointed by the Supreme Court. There would be two CBE members. And thank you to Mr. Kramer for pointing out to me that the memo is inconsistent. So this is up for the discussion for the committee. But either the committee as a whole can decide who these 2 people will be, or the chair can appoint those 2 people. But there would be 2 CBE representatives serving on the steering committee. Additionally, we would have a board trustee member, and then the chair of the EDGE team. And then the rest of these individuals are experts that can really help and guide as far as the actual implementation of what the development of the exam might look like. That would be an exam developer, a psychometrician, a universal testing design expert, emerging technologies or innovative testing expert, and a professional licensure expert. And then the Supreme Court liaison would be part of this committee as well, but would not be a voting member. So that's the proposal today. And then some of the individuals, different representative groups that the committee talked about last week would be represented on an advisory committee, to include law school deans, practicing attorneys who supervise new lawyers, current students, recently admitted attorney, California Lawyers Association representative, disability rights expert, and a representative from the Council on Access and Fairness. Those are some of the types of individuals that you all had talked about last time as important perspectives to have. And our proposal is that those types of individuals be serving on an advisory committee as opposed to voting members. So that's the proposal that's up on the screen and in the memo, and I'm happy to take any questions. Yes, Mr. Kramer.
Couple practical questions. So I think the steering committee is going to be subject to Bagley-Keene.
Yes.
Which brings some baggage. But as for the advisory committee especially, I wonder if it would be smart. I'm not sure that needs to be. Well, it's subject to Bagley-Keene, but it doesn't have the requirement of everybody being in an accessible to the public location because it's advisory, as I understand the rules. But in order to get quorums of, especially the advisory committee, I wonder if it wouldn't be smart to appoint alternates for some of the people. So if they can't show up, they can send their alternate to allow them to be better heard, but also make it so we don't, lose a quorum and our timetable gets postponed due to those kinds of problems, which, are very real. I mean, we have them sometimes with our subcommittees. So I wonder if that wouldn't be smart. I'm very much in favor of the full committee appointing our representatives because I want to make sure that ultimately it's going to come back to us, but I don't see this as a project where we can wait as a committee until the end. And then, it's never going to be a thumbs up, thumbs down decision where something is going to have to be done to satisfy the court's assignment. And so I think we need to provide our advice to our representatives along the way to make sure that, our concerns are addressed as best they can be. I was personally very dissatisfied with the blue ribbon process, and especially the end run that the board then made around us when they tried to resurrect the portfolio bar exam that the Blue Ribbon Committee couldn't come to a recommendation about. And so I would also ask that we have a standing item on our full committee agenda meetings where we receive a report back, even if it is that nothing has happened every meeting. So we are continuously informed and reminded of that this very big and important animal is going to come to visit us at some point, and we're going to have to make a decision that then goes to the full board and then to the Supreme Court, the Board of Trustees and the Supreme Court. Let's see. I guess that's all I have for the moment.
Okay, thank you. Do you want me to respond to that first, or do you have, sure. So I will, thank you for those suggestions, and we have our notes on all of these as we move forward. I will say, as far as what's on the agenda for today, what I'm recommending is that the committee approve the steering committee, and then once the committee is actually formed and up and running, I think we can make some determinations about what the advisory committee, what that will look like. Will there be smaller subsets based on subject matter, or in which case maybe some of these Bagley-Keene issues might not be an issue. We can talk about those alternatives. I think those are all good ideas. But for today, what I'm proposing is that we move forward with the vote on the steering committee composition, which will move to the board, and then we'll start accepting, assuming, with whatever you all vote on, assuming the board also approves it, we'll start accepting applications and then come back to the committee at the April meeting with a slate of proposed individuals to serve on it that you'll vote on. And then so just to give you a sense of the timeline, once that committee is formally appointed, the rest of them by the Supreme Court, and then once that committee convenes, we can talk with them about what the best format might be for the advisory committee. Sorry, Dr. Cow.
Thank you. So I like this idea of having an advisory committee and a steering committee, and I think that's great. So I actually have just some technical questions about the steering committee.
Yes.
Could you clarify for me what is the difference between an emerging technology innovative testing expert as compared to a universal design testing expert? Because I'm not sure what the distinction is on that.
Very good question. Thank you. So universal design testing or testing design, maybe is the better way to write that. I'm not an expert on this, but my understanding is these are experts who know how to assess individuals, even with different learning differences, like the same that you can take into consideration. For example, the hope would be someone that can help advise us on minimizing the need for testing accommodations, so that, of course, we won't completely get rid of it, but, to be more mindful as we're designing the exam about learning differences as we are putting the assessment together. So that's what universal design is. Is that about right? Anything to add there? About what it is?
Yeah, universal design means to make the test as accessible as possible.
Accessible as possible, yes. And then the emerging technologies or innovative testing design, there are very specific technical tools that you can use in assessment, whether it be on simulations or computer adaptive testing for when you're developing what the exam will look like. Like if you ask one question, if you answer one way, it might go this way. If you answer another way, it might go that way. And it's all built into the code and the way that the test is designed. So having somebody who can understand from the beginning as the group is trying to make determinations about what will be tested, how do we determine what minimum competence is for an entry-level attorney. These people with this type of testing knowledge can be part of the discussion to talk about how it will be assessed.
Thank you for that explanation. That helps clarify for me. I'd like to ask that would those two experts not be vendors that we would use to make sure there's no conflict of interest, I'm assuming?
Right. They would be individual, PhDs probably that we would use as, yes, that's right, not vendors.
And also, I think I just want to make something very clear. We are discussing the composition as far as the slates of candidates. We haven't, we haven't nominated anyone yet, and I have made it very clear to Audrey and Bridget that if any members have any nominees or candidates that they would like to recommend, by all means, send in their names. We haven't started the process yet, but right now the most important thing is making sure the composition is the right thing. It's the right, it's the right thing to do. Obviously, at the last meeting, our composition, has more than 18 members, and now we're able to cut that down to something a lot more manageable in consultation with the core, with the staff. And so, and I think this composition makes sense, right? Because the more people you have, the harder it takes to make an informed decision. And so by only including those individuals who we believe would be instrumental to the success of the design, I think that's all we really need at this point. But again, I think Mr. Kramer has sort of alluded to this, and also the staff. We need to make a decision now. This is not something we can wait any longer. We just need to decide on the composition, and then it's going to take another month for us to find the right candidates and the slates of people who can actually do the job. Of course, if any CB members, who may be interested in serving, by all means, let us know as well. We definitely will put your names in. So.
Other questions?
Yes, question over here, please.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Gongora.
Can you refresh me on the timeline, please? I know, obviously, the chair just mentioned kind of the recruitment and appointment process, but I guess when's a decision going to be made, or when is feedback going to be provided?
Yes, thank you. Good question. So it's kind of a complicated process because we do have many different appointing authorities and people that have to approve this. So this is what will happen. Today you will vote on the steering committee. The proposal is for the steering committee to be appointed for an 18-month term once they get started. But what would have to happen is you approve the composition today. The board at its February, I think it's February 20th, they will put that forward as the committee's recommendation, assuming they approve the composition. Staff will then put an application together and start accepting applications for the people to fill the slots. We will come back to the committee at the April meeting with a proposed slate of individuals. And then if the committee votes on that, we will bring that to the Board of Trustees in May at its May meeting. And then when they approve that, it will go to the Supreme Court. So there's several of these individuals need to be formally appointed by the Supreme Court. Once the court, we don't know when the court will rule on it. Once it does, then we can convene the committee. So I'm expecting that to happen sometime this summer. And then at that point, we can start with their 18-month term will start. And I really think that will be making these higher level policy decisions. And they can also determine how they want the work to flow, what types of advisories they need, and how they want to form that advisory committee.
Okay, so we're looking at 6 months before appointment or recommendation to Supreme Court. So overall, this process will take 2 years to probably get to where we want to get to? Or is it based on the committee's ability to find consensus and kind of get ahead? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I will say, for what it's worth, so we've been talking to many consultants, like I said, this is a very big process to redevelop a whole exam. We are not starting from scratch. We have the Blue Ribbon Commission, we've had the CAPA that you've talked about earlier, the practice analysis. So we definitely have some things, but we have spoken, we spoke to somebody recently from they redid the dental exam. It took them 9 years, just to give you a context. I don't expect it's going to take us that long because we have things in place.
Yeah.
But not only do big decisions have to be made about what it will look like, what it will test, how that will work, but then we have to give statutory notice. We have to give 2 years notice once we know what the exam will be before that actual implementation takes place. So, the very earliest would be 4 years from now, I would say. And I think that's probably unlikely. I think will take a little bit longer than that.
Okay, and what's going to be your role in the process?
I'm going to help. That's a good question. So my job is in addition to admissions, I lead the Division of Consumer Protection, Admissions, Access, and Inclusion. So I will work with Audrey and the team, but we also have a program analyst, Sharon Lim, who's been wonderful, who is going to really be dedicated to driving this from a staff level, and she's going to be working with me on that. And then we will be hiring consultants to help us, like psychometricians, again, behind the scenes, not people that will be voting, but will be advising us on how to tee the process up for the steering committee and helping to make sure they're hearing the right presentations, working up the recommendations, all of that we will be doing, managing as staff.
Okay, I think my colleague over there mentioned he wanted reporting or a standing item.
Yes.
Do you feel that is something that will be possible?
Oh,
do you
absolutely.
feel like we'll hear updates like, hey, we made it to this level, so probably will be more quicker updates until we get to the meat and potatoes of the situation.
For sure. I mean, absolutely. That would be our intention is every committee of our examiners that would just be meeting, we would have likely the chair of the steering committee or at least
Perfect.
staff would give you all an update on where they are and what's happening in the process.
Awesome. You have a big task ahead. Good luck.
Thank you.
I will be voting in support of this. I think it's an amazing committee you put together. A lot of dissenting and a lot of collaborative voices. So looking forward to the process and the outcome. Let's see. I am the most veteran, one of the most veteran members, Mr. Chair. Me and Mr. Lawrence had this conversation earlier. So I'm hoping in 4 years, I'll still be here and be able to see that along. So good luck to the rest of us because that's going to be quite the task on all of us. So thank you. Thank you very much for your report. Great work. And I'm excited. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And the only thing I wanted to add is, obviously, we would have 2 members on the steering committee, and so, vote for your colleagues who are going to be very committed to this process and who can provide us with around-the-clock updates as well. I am certainly looking forward to that.
Okay, so I think the resolution is on.
So, yeah, Devin, can you put up the resolution? Oh, here we go.
So the resolutions, okay, yes. So as you can see, if you scroll up a little bit, Devin, the first one is for just the exact composition that we've just been discussing. And then the second one is for the 18-month term, which we think makes sense just to get it started, and then we can reassess at that point. Maybe they'll be done with their work and we can move on, or maybe we might need some more time, but depending on where we are in the process, we think 18 months is a good starting point. And then the final resolution is just to direct us to present it to the Board of Trustees for approval.
And for the committee, there is a proposed timeline on page 4 of the agenda item. So if you want to see the entire timeline up to summer 2025, that's on page 4 as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So this is Michael. I'd like to go ahead and make that motion based on the resolution on the screen.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kongora. Any additional discussion or debates? Well, here none. Devin, please.
Dr. Bolton?
Yes.
Dr. Cow?
Yes.
Kareem Gangora?
Yes.
Larry Kaplan?
Yes.
Paul Kramer?
Yes.
Alex Lawrence?
Yes.
Esther Lynn? Justice Macy-Walla?
Yes.
Bethany Peak? Ashley Silva Guzman?
Yes.
Judge Reyna?
Yes.
Vince Reyes? Alan Yokelson?
Yes.
Alex Chan?
Yes.
With 11 yeses and 0 nos, the motion passes.
Thank you, Devin.
Thank you.
Regarding agenda items 4.2, 4.3, we have withdrawn those 2 items. On to agenda item 4.4, which is the presentation on institutional accreditation by representatives of WASC, Senior College and University Commission.
That's set at 1.
For 1 p.m., so we'll just push that back until later this afternoon. 4.5 now, it's also an item that has been withdrawn, which means the next item is 4.6, action on the Committee of Bar Examiners refund of fees policy. We have a report from Ms. Lunes and Ms. Romero. Please take it away, ladies.
Good morning, everyone. The committee most recently, let me see, you having trouble? Will do. Okay. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Okay. So the committee most recently amended the policy in August 2023 to exclude credit card processing fees from refunds, impose a 90-day deadline following the exam to submit a refund request due to a death of an immediate family member, medical emergency, or an occurrence that was disastrous, and to reduce the refund amount for death or medical emergency that occurred after submittal of an exam application but prior to the examination from 95% to 50%. As we all know, with the impact of the wildfires on bar exam applicants, with the recent wildfires that have taken place in Los Angeles, we have had at least 20 applicants that are asking to withdraw from the February exam. And with the current refund policy that we now have, it would not allow for refunds because this incident occurred more than 30 days before the examination. So we are requesting some policy amendments, and applicants impacted by disastrous occurrence between the final registration deadline and the exam date will be eligible for a full refund, excluding the credit card fees. And the criteria for applicants to be eligible would be evacuation or displacement for at least 2 weeks. Primary residence was destroyed, you can't live in inhabitable or significantly damaged, providing temporary housing for an immediate family member affected by the disaster, or death or serious illness or disabling injury due to this disaster. So the policy implementation process that we have in place now is the refund request must be submitted within 90 days of the exam's first day with official documentation, of course. And the exclusion, as mentioned earlier, would be the credit card processing fees that would not be refunded. So what we are now recommending is for the Committee of Bar Examiners to approve the amendments and seek Board of Trustees approval. And there has also been some minor clarification and grammatical changes, and gender-neutral pronouns have been incorporated into this new policy as well. Are there any questions?
Yesterday, I sent you folks some suggestions after I read it, and I see that you've changed that portion there. It says, now it says, it was ambiguous. It used to suggest that you had to meet all the criteria, and now you say at least one, which makes it clear that it's one of those is enough, which is, I'm sure, what we meant. I had some other suggestions in the marked up document I sent you. Did you address any of those?
Yes, thank you. We did address them. With the only thing that we couldn't think of was with the death certificate. We haven't really had any problem with applicants being able to submit it timely in order for them to get a refund. But other than that, everything else was incorporated.
Oh, okay, yeah, my point there was sometimes it can take a while to get a death certificate, and another member of the staff told me that they had, in their personal experience, as in mine, they had had the same problem. So what I was just thinking there is we could say they get everything else in, and then we just sit on their request until the death certificate is available. If you wanted to say something like that.
You
It's not
think
a big
more
deal.
than 90 days after the exam? In terms of how long it would take? They have until 90 days after the exam to,
Okay, so, and the death would have had to have occurred
before the exam.
oh, maybe that's not a problem
Yeah.
then. Okay.
Not to be
thank you.
morbid, but in my experience, I don't think it has taken that long either.
I just didn't want somebody to get hung up because, the local coroner is slow to issue those things. And in my case, it was a doctor that just wouldn't sign off on a thing for a while, and
Right.
was holding up an escrow, which was really annoying.
Yeah. I think the 90 days is okay.
I think the staff is trying to make it as flexible as possible, given the circumstances. But of course, if there are any other terms or provisions where we could, make
Okay,
them a little more
yeah, this
lax.
looks good to me now then.
Yeah.
Just procedurally, there is a meeting of the Executive Committee and the Contracts Committee Monday of the board, so they can ratify this basically one business day after we vote on it.
So I'll make a motion to approve the recommended action.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Anyone calling for a second?
This is Michael, second that.
Thank you, Dr. Cal. Any additional discussion or debates for this agenda item? Hearing none, Devin, please take the honor.
Dr. Bolton?
Yes.
Dr. Cow?
Yes.
Kareem Gangora?
Yes.
Larry Kaplan?
Yes.
Paul Kramer?
Yes.
Alex Lawrence?
Yes.
Esther Lynn? Justice Macy-Walla? Bethany Peak? Ashley Silva Guzman?
Yes.
Judge Reyna?
Yes.
Vince Reyes? Alan Yokelson?
Yes.
Alex Chan?
Yes.
With 11 yeses and 0 nos, the motion passes.
Alan, we missed you here. That's a great discussion.
Oh, it's like he's in the room.
I'm sorry, guys.
I saved you a chair. I'm waiting for you to come. So.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I'm at the hospital right now. And in fact, I'm going to have to sign off for a little while. So if the record could reflect, I'll be leaving. I'll be coming back in a little bit.
Thank you, Alan. Hold on.
Bye, Alan.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for the discussion and for the public at large. As I said before, the committee is very committed to helping all those who were impacted by the wildfires. And if there's any additional relief that we could provide, please by all means contact us, either Audrey or myself as well. With that, we are on to agenda item number 5, Director's Report. First, 5.1, we have an update on the February 2025 California Bar exam from Ms. Lunes.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I'll be updating everybody on the February 2025 California Bar exam. We have a PowerPoint. So as of today, we have 5,367 applicants that will be sitting for the February 2025 bar exam. I want to highlight a few important deadlines here. And before I do that, also I want to highlight that in terms of how people will be testing, we have 33% of our applicants plan to take the exam in person. And that would be either at a measured learning test site or one of the larger sites that have been procured for the exam. Those sites, there are 4 of them, and you'll see them in the next page. They are Northern and Southern California, and 67% of our applicants are going to be taking this exam remotely. As you may recall, one of the requirements for sitting for this exam and taking it remotely was to take a mock exam. That mock exam is required for 2 reasons. One is to orient people to all our applicants to how the system functions so that you can go in and applicants were encouraged and obviously required to test how the essays, how the multiple choice and the PT function. So it was to get everybody familiar with the system. And for those testing remotely, it was also a way to assess whether their systems were compatible with the system, with the measured learning platform. So anybody who failed to take the mock exam is not able to take the bar exam. And we made that clear through all our communication. We sent emails. It's part of our weekly email updates that we sent. It was in our FAQ. And so about 97% of our applicants completed the mock. So that meant that 3% were withdrawn from the exam based on the fact that they failed to take this mock. Can we get to the next slide, please? Now, here, I want to highlight those that are testing at the larger test sites. The large test sites are noted here. We'll be going to the Ontario Convention Center, which we have in the past, at the grounds in Sacramento, which we participated and took. The exams were offered there in July. The South San Francisco Conference Center, it's familiar with some people. We use that for the baby bar in the past, for the first year law student exam. And then in July, we were also at the Chula Vista Elite Athlete Training Center. So those are 4 locations where the majority are in-person applicants will be taking the exam. And also, I want to remind everybody that at the direction of the CBE, applicants must take the exam according to synchronously, so based on the time frame here in California. And that has implications for those that are wanting to test in person, but live outside of the Pacific and Mountain time zones. What's happening is that the measured learning test sites, their operations are not available. Business operations are outside of our time zone. So anybody who's in the Eastern time zone or in anything Eastern or Central are not able to test in person at their locations. They'd have to come and test if they want to test in person at a Pacific or a Mountain time zone. So, and we made that clear also in our sets of communication and encourage those people that are in those time zones to switch to remote testing. And so that is part of why our proportions look the way they do of the number of people testing remotely and in person. I also want to highlight a few important deadlines. Somebody called in earlier and mentioned that the deadline to register to take the exam is on Monday, and that's not the case. So I want to highlight a few important deadlines that we're working with right now. So January 30th, which was yesterday, the scheduling window opened for people to be able to register for the California bar exam for their session. And so we are aware that some complications occurred when that registration opened, and they've been addressed. And email invitations are going out on a rolling basis. So there are applicants that have not received their invitations to schedule, but they will shortly. The majority of applicants have received their invitations, but we are aware there are some still pending. For example, examinees that had last-minute changes that perhaps moved from remote to in-person or vice versa, their invitations are forthcoming. So everybody should just be aware that we know that some people have not received their invitations, but the majority of applicants have. Another deadline that's very important to highlight is February 3rd is the final filing deadline for anybody appealing a testing accommodation. So that's happening on February 3rd. February 11th is the final eligibility deadline. So applicants who have not been approved for their to sit for the exam because we're waiting for either a proof of law study or a certificate of good standing. That deadline is February 11th. And as for the deadline when you can register for the exam, that is on February 14th. So it's not Monday. It's February 14th is the last day that you could register for your examination date or session. That's the date that the scheduling window closes. It's also the deadline for filing an emergency testing accommodation petition. And again, those are petitions for anybody who has an emergency that's come up. So it must be for a condition that did not exist prior to that date. All right. Or prior to the testing accommodations deadline. Are there any questions then about the February 2025 California bar exam?
I recall in some of the confidential information we'll be discussing later that somebody was complaining about one of the test sites being cold. I believe it was way too hot in July. Do you recall which site that might have been? I'm thinking it's either the San Diego or the Sacramento.
That was too cold. So this is now too hot. So for the July exam?
Yeah.
We get reports of different temperature.
Yes.
But I think there might have been at one of our meetings someone saying that it was too warm in Chula Vista.
I'm not thinking of the Cow Palace one, which was a few years ago. But
Yeah, that was last February, and it was cold, not hot. It was too cold.
Okay. There were some complaints about one of these sites, I think. Has anyone in our group ever visited either of those?
Yeah, our staff have gone to all of these sites. So we were at Chula Vista and at the Cow Palace. At all these 4 sites we've been to. We've staffed them in the past.
So we'll be able to do that again this time?
No, we're not. These are being staffed by Measured Learning, the contractor that's been
so all of
hired for them.
these, even the large test sites are staffed by
Measured Learning, correct.
So our staff will go take a peek, right?
That is not scheduled, but we have offered to be able to do that. We're actually working with them on the training process, so that's a possibility. All right.
Wait, sorry, so we don't know if we'll be able to observe, is that what you're saying?
Oh, yeah. We have not asked, requested for the CBE to come. One of the concerns of the vendor is, carrying out the functions that they have to, and also balancing between that and visitors. And so it's something that we need to address with them once more, but we haven't solidified that plan yet. Yeah.
I mean, I can see that applied maybe to members of the committee, but it seems to me this is a new vendor, and our staff representatives should be checking on them as part of normal contract management.
Okay. Well, we are, like as I mentioned, still working out the protocols. We are basically supporting the process for administering this exam. So we are meeting with them on a weekly basis. And I think it would be an easy ask to make them if we could send State Bar staff to observe or serve as advisors on site. I don't think that should be a problem. It sounds like something they could accommodate.
Certainly applies here.
I mean, I certainly understand their concern. Maybe they were not looking for someone to look over their shoulder while they're, carrying out their functions. But at the same time, I think the committee is concerned about the viability and the success of administering this exam. And so I certainly, see concerns of both sides. So see if, the vendor is willing to at least allow, maybe not the entire committee, but at least some members of the committee to visit the sites. We can talk about the numbers, and we can even set a schedule to minimize any potential disruption. But I think that's probably a good compromise, perhaps. But if you can just take it back to the vendor and see what they're willing to do, that'd be great.
Yes. Like I said, we're in constant communication, so I think we could do that. But then also, in the meanwhile, if there are CBE members that are interested, maybe if they permit it, please let Audrey or Devin know, and then we could follow up, because the exam is coming up. We're almost 27 days away.
And some of the Measure Learning team is in the attendee pool, and they are saying they will take that under advisement and let us know about visiting the sites. So thank you for your input.
And could you please tell us again the dates of the February bar exam?
Sure, especially because I just said they are February 25th and 26th.
And if my schedule permits, I'd be happy to go to the Sacramento site, since that's my jurisdiction.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You never say no to justice. Just keep that in mind. On that note, by the way, I had the honor to take the mock exam last week, and I know the Supreme Court representative also took the mock exam last week, and I certainly had all my comments forwarded to the staff. But rest assured, I'm looking through the entire process from the beginning to the end to make sure that everything is what it should be. And by the way, if any one of you want to take the mock exam, let us know.
Yeah, we're going to grade those.
Oh, boy. Fail all the way through.
All right. Any other questions related to the February bar exam?
I had a couple questions. So first question is, with the shift of some people moving from those who anticipated testing in person to remote, do we anticipate that Measure is going to have any issues accommodating the, couple thousand applicants that are going to be testing all on the same 2 days?
No, we don't. We have worked with Measure Learning to secure both the in-person space and the capacity to test remotely.
Okay, perfect. And then I've heard of some various tech issues and problems, and from what I've heard, there's been some confusion of measure kicking back questions saying it's the bar's question, call the bar, and the bar saying it's a measure issue, call measure. So I was just wondering if there is or is going to be a written FAQ of who to contact in different situations. I know that there was the in-person FAQ, but I think a written FAQ of if this is going on, then contact this person that's been kind of vetted and confirmed through measure in the bar might be helpful to applicants if we don't already have one.
Yes. Ashley, and thank you so much for this question, because I also want to remind people about the different communication that we're making available. So we've added some of those questions in the FAQ on like who to contact in the event of tech issues, in the event of if you need to know what are the prohibited or allowed items at the bar exam. But we're also sending weekly blasts, and we've done this for the past, I'd say, 4 years at least, where we're sending a weekly blast for the 6 weeks leading up to the exam. So this, today, I think our third blast goes out, or maybe our fourth. So what we do is we send last minute reminders, and so we have checklists also of what to remember. And what to not bring or how to prepare for the exam. And so we're planning on also adding information there on, steps to take so that in the event like you're having a tech issue at the exam, whether it's in person or you're having issues remotely, like who to contact, just so that people act swiftly and really don't waste time. For example, calling the state bar if you have a tech issue, because those really need to be, the support needs to come from measured learning. So we'll have, for example, phone numbers as well as steps like how to use the chat box to get in contact with someone. So we'll be adding those instructions and any last minute detail and information that's important for applicants to know as they're going into the exam.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a quick question,
Yes.
Amy. Thank you for that. How are we doing with applications? Are we down? Are we up? Are we where we're supposed to be?
We anticipated having, I think when we were planning for this exam, about 4,500 applicants. And as you can see, we overshot that goal. We have more than 4,500. I noted
It's like
that
5,700. So we're a lot over
Yeah.
what we anticipated.
If it's possible, the next meeting, can you just create a chart that showcases what that looks like for the last 5 years? And then this is our first remote exam with this vendor, correct?
It
I
is.
just want to see the trend of what's going to happen over time. Obviously, we'll probably have more peak and interest for remote, but just
I think
kind of-
you will be pleased when we get to Cody's slide, because that is exactly what he's going to show in a
Oh,
few
my
minutes.
goodness.
So
All
you
right. I
are
was looking over
really
his
setting him
notes,
up.
just making sure. Thank you. I
You don't have
appreciate
to
it.
wait until next meeting.
All right. Good luck, and best of luck to you.
Thank you. Right.
Well, assuming Adrian? Wait, the next agenda item is 5.2, which is the update on content review panels. According to my agenda, we have a presentation also from Amy, but.
I think she might be handing it to Adrian.
Exactly, yeah, looking over to him, okay.
Happy
Take it
to
away,
do
Adrian.
this. Just an update from December from the last CBE meeting. So we did hold one multiple choice question session in December over 2 days. That was our largest group of panelists to date amongst all of the multiple choice question review sessions. The content panel, they reviewed the final batch of multiple choice questions that were used to put in the bank for the February bar exam. Some plans for this year. We do have some additional sessions scheduled for February, March, and May. Those are all going to be 2-day sessions each. The content panel will review additional multiple choice questions that'll be put in the bank for the upcoming July exam. And that will put us on target for that July 2025 California Bar Exam Administration. Anyone have any questions on that? Cool. Thank you.
Next up, agenda item 5.3, which is the staff's update on the video recording information conferences. Tara, you have a report for us?
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. This will be just very brief. So we are working with our IT team. It's our understanding that most of the State Bar staff will switch from using Zoom, which is how we currently hold informal conferences, to Microsoft Teams. We don't have a date on that yet, but so we're starting to research Teams and the security and the bandwidth requirements and things of that nature. So if we were to do it, we want to ensure that applicants are able to attend the conferences and hopefully not have any issues with their videos or audio recording. So it has been added to the CBE work plan parking lot. You'll see it with the date for next year, just since we are starting to explore the technical side of it right now.
Question. How are you conducting the moral character conferences right now?
Via Zoom.
Via Zoom, okay. So why can't you just start recording them? For operations and management appeals for this meeting, we received links to Zoom meetings, recordings, and we were able to look at those. And I found those to be very helpful in assessing the credibility of the applicants. And I don't see why we can't start doing that now. If you change to Teams, I presume you'll do that both for the O&M appeals and the informal conferences, right?
Presumably, I don't know which staff will be able to keep the Zoom accounts or not yet. They haven't let us know. We had been researching the Zoom requirements, again, the bandwidth. Just informal conferences, can be quite long. We have several attendees. I know some of the Chapter 6 ones do as well, but we paused those efforts when we were told last year that we would be losing Zoom and we didn't have a time frame. So we can look into that as well. We could ask IT for their help with that.
Yeah, I just don't see the reason for the delay. I noted that it's in the work plan, it's been put off until 2026. You're going to have to solve that problem for O&M when you do switch to Teams, if you decide to do that. So I don't see why we don't just use Zoom in the meantime. Well, and it's simply a matter of, I hope that you record the conferences
We record the
that
audio.
you're conducting now. So you press the record button. The only problem is making the recordings available to us. So I'm befuddled about the need to put this off.
Well, we actually don't record via Zoom because we record it using a recording devices like we did when we were in person. The reason being, again, we were concerned about some of the bandwidth requirements. I mean, David has been in more informals recently than I have, but I know we have had challenges even just with all of us present, not recording via Zoom, applicants having a clear connection. And, we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to be heard and we can hear them clearly. So I don't know if you have anything to add from new ones. No? Okay. I said nothing new to add.
Thank you, Tara. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, next item is 5.4, which is the staff's updates on phase 1 of the California bar exam experiment. Cody, take it away.
I actually think this might be Adrian again.
Oh, is it Adrian? Sorry, man of the hour, we'll have to wait.
Speak at the same time.
Adrian, take it away.
Of course. I think this was mentioned at the last CBE meeting during closed session, but just to put some additional information out there. So the phase 1 of the California bar exam experiment, that was last November. The experiment tested 49 multiple choice questions and tested 7 subject areas with 7 multiple choice questions in each of those areas. The questions, they were evaluated by our psychometrician. He looked at item difficulty, item discrimination, and option analysis. For the number of questions that tested within range within favorable range, for item difficulty, there were 35 items that were within the expected range. For looking at the item discrimination, there were 29 items that were within range. And then the option analysis, there were 43 items that were within that expected range. Anyone have any questions on this?
I guess I need to be reminded what we were testing for. This is presumably deciding which questions are.
Which tested well. So for the item difficulty, it shows the percentage of applicants that got the question right. So we didn't want questions that had a really low percentage or a really high percentage. For something that's really low, it could be viewed as maybe too hard or too difficult. And then something that tested where everyone got it right, that could be something where it was just too easy.
Okay, but this is the experiment, which is a different process than developing the multiple choice questions for the February bar exam, right?
It was developed by our same vendor. So it would have been similar questions that would be used.
But the goal of this, of phase one, was to test, the goal was to test Kaplan questions. So those are the exact questions. We use 49 questions to test on all of these aspects, the difficulty, discrimination, and option analysis.
Is that answer your question?
We need more than 49 for the exam though, right?
Exactly. And we talked a little bit about this at the last session. So that the 49 gave us a sense of what they would look like and how they would perform at a larger level. I think our psychometrician presented some statistics on that at the last meeting. But we're also working on getting a publication out related to this, so the findings will be shared on just specifically these items in terms of how they performed, because the idea is to for us to get a sense of how confident we were with using these questions for the February bar exam and beyond. And so we're pretty confident about the questions as a result of this analysis and the experiment. But I think Adrian could answer the rest of the questions about the other two categories and what they consist of.
And where do we stand on the other experiments, open book, that sort of thing?
That's not on the agenda, but we are planning on doing that. I think it's going to be coordinated as part of the July bar exam. And this is where we're testing the 3 different modalities. So this includes, as you suggested, the open book and various open book options, standard, and then extra time to see if how that impacts performance. And the last is remote and in-person, looking at how that impacts performance. So we're in the process of finalizing the design and then going back to revisit whether the same grading adjustment incentive is feasible. And so we'll be coming to the committee probably by the next meeting.
Thanks.
Sorry, I just wanted to pull up my notes about the other two. So for the item discrimination, just add a little bit of context to that. I apologize, I lost my notes. I'd have to go back, but I can definitely circle back with the committee regarding the item discrimination. But at least for the option analysis, it looks at the various options as being plausible distractors. So we didn't want any questions where only one option was being selected, because then that means the other ones are obviously wrong. So we wanted to look at questions where at least 3 to 4 of those options were being selected by the applicants. And then again, for the item discrimination, I apologize. I'll get back to everybody on that.
Any additional questions or discussions from the CBE? Thank you for the update, Adrian. Now,
Finally.
I've been waiting at the edge
I
of my
know.
seat.
Item 5.5, update on admissions data dashboard. Cody, man of the hour, please take it away.
Thank you. Well, before I grant Kareem's wish and show some of the visuals that we have, I want to just set the stage. We have been bringing, I think, to the committee, maybe over the last year, a lot of different data, and it's kind of been evolving in the format and kind of deliverability. I think this predates me, but previously the committee would receive a PDF handout, essentially just a collection of tables that was a single snapshot about the programs in the Office of Admissions. We then, over the last year, started to introduce more visualizations and time series to show trends over time, and those were presented kind of on an ad hoc basis in our director's report. What we have developed and what I want to introduce to the committee today is a resource that is meant to show those time series trends and give a overview of the Office of Admissions programs in a dashboard that the committee can engage with and that the Office of Admissions will maintain over time. I'm going to give a quick demo in just a second, but I want to just spotlight what the initial insights are. So we're showing in our dashboard, and I will present in a second, a volume of applications for each of admissions programs over time. We have the ability to provide more insights on the background, the demographics of our applicant population. And when I say demographics, I mean whether or not they are U.S. students, foreign attorneys, foreign applicants, just a level of detail that we haven't been able to provide before. And based on the feedback that we've received from the committee, we've also introduced Office of Finance budget projections and actuals over the last few years to also inform the information that the committee's seeing regarding our programs. In the short term, the dashboard that I'm about to present is something that we would like to make available to our committee members. Today, I'll be demonstrating it, and then I think our staff will work on creating some documentation to explain the variables and values and kind of a user guide for the committee and others that will engage this. In the long term, we imagine that we will incorporate into this dashboard additional pages that include various publications that the Office of Admissions currently produces. I think one of the most interesting will be converting our exam statistics PDFs into a visualization that can really benefit certain audiences to see trends over time. So we're in that early short-term phase now, and let me just switch over. I want to share my screen and introduce the committee to this resource that we are developing. Okay, there we go. So I'll just walk through the different segments here, and then Kareem, I'll give you a demonstration of our bar exam numbers as I think a great kind of use case. But as I mentioned, this first iteration is really kind of our overview page. Our intention here is hopefully to share with the committee, again, a kind of an overview of how admissions programs are performing, and we, having consulted with all of our teams, believe that one of the best ways to do that is to demonstrate kind of our case volume over time. So using the bar exam statistics or case volume as an example, we're able to show all of our bar exam submitted cases over time periods. So let me just demonstrate this over the last X number of years. And let me just set up our filters here. Okay. So here's a demonstration of how we hope this tool can be engaged. This is showing our case volume by quarter related to February bar exams, beginning with 2020 all the way to 2025. And there's a certain kind of seasonality to our case volume. Of course, the deadline for the February bar exam is in the first day of January. And so we see in Q4, we tend to get the largest amount of applications. We can see from this demonstration that Q4 of 2024 has the highest number of cases that have been received regarding the bar exam than any of the previous Q4s. We can also hone in on specific exam administration. So if we select our 2025 February bar exam, we see that we have 6,454 cases in total submitted. That includes both approved, pending, and withdrawn. And looking at previous years, we see that that outpaces both February 2024, 2023, and 2022, which had only 4,720 cases. So this is something that I think is particularly easy to engage with our bar exam case volume, but we also are going to provide to the committee information across all of the State Bar's current programs and cases that are submitted. Also, again, mentioning that the committee has asked for this in many different ways, and we're eager to provide it. We have our admissions fund, both our expense projections, our revenue projections, surplus deficit projections, and our projected reserve balance. Again, the committee members, once they have access to this, will be able to select certain values and identify those trends over time. So for example, we can see that expenses since 2021 have continued to climb, and so has revenue to some extent. I think the new layers of detail that are really exciting, and this is something that we were not able to provide in kind of our previous deliverables, are some of these extra layers of detail. So we can provide different case subtypes. In the example of the California bar exam, there really aren't, we just get an application, but let's consider our MJP programs. We have certain types of applications that we receive. And maybe most importantly is our applicant type. And so going back to the bar exam, we can see in February 2025, we can offer the committee insights about the population. We can see that half of the applicants for the February exam are U.S. students or graduates. We have 14% that are out-of-state U.S. attorneys, 7% are foreign educated graduates, and then we have 22% that are foreign attorneys. So this is, I think, a layer of detail we've never provided before, and so we're really excited about that. So this is just a demonstration. As I mentioned, we are going to produce some documentation to make this more accessible, and then the goal is to publish this in a way that the committee members are able to access it and engage with it. And it'll be our goal to update that data prior to each meeting so that it's up-to-date information. Great, thank you so much.
Oh, Cody, I have a question. Is that Power BI?
Yes.
Is that tool Power BI?
Yes, that is.
I'm curious how much information is, I guess, on applicant data being sort of imported. I know it's as much as, I mean, you collect a lot of information from candidates. I just wonder, are you using the full scope, or is it like location and just a certain level?
What we just showed there is really the information that we gather from an applicant at the time that they create an account through the applicant portal, and then information when they submit an application for the various programs. So, we will still bring to the committee other data that we gather from applicants, like, for example, in our post-exam survey. So after the bar exam, we ask questions that we do not include in our formal applications, but are still of interest. So for example, we're beginning to ask whether a test taker is a caregiver or is employed in some fashion. We don't ask that upon the applicant registering with us, but that's still, I think, insightful information. So we'll have to be very thoughtful in communicating to the committee in the future where the source of the data that we're presenting.
Yeah, just curious, because I use it, I know you can do like heat maps and just showing like some of that demographic information of where applications are coming from. And then I'll be interested to see how customizable, like the information that you'll give the committee members, how we can kind of, manipulate some of the areas of the dashboard.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I think we have a lot of really interesting and creative ideas of where it can go. We certainly welcome some thoughts. Right now, I think our initial first steps is to enhance existing materials, as I mentioned, our exam statistics. And then I think maybe a phase 2 or phase 3 step will be to introduce entirely new concepts, like perhaps a geographic or heat map or something like that. Thank you for that input, though. Yeah, so that is the goal. Once we have some documentation to share, I think we're determining whether or not this will exist kind of as a standalone for you to access, or perhaps we embed it in maybe a SharePoint drive where we provide other materials. Some of that is still to be determined, but the ultimate goal is that you'll be able to access this on your own. Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cody. Well, we are well past the 90-minute mark. I think this is probably a good time for a bio break. So let's take a 5-minute break, and we'll be back at roughly 10:40.
And Alex, while we're still on, this is Ashley. I am going to be logging off at 11, and then I think that will run into lunch. So I'll be back at 1.
Thank you, Ashley. Okay, we're in recess. Coming back. We're going to go back to the top of the agenda, starting at item 1.1, which is the CBE work plan.
I think we're going to put it on the screen just a second.
Yeah, we put the work plan on the screen.
I can go first.
Please. Thank you.
So if you stop right there, Devin. So I think just as requested, we added the moral character rule revisions back onto the work plan while we are awaiting the court's review and hopeful approval. There was also a minor change to the presentation that we're planning to bring. So I think in addition to having the lawyer assistants come and present in August, David will also do a portion about like how mental health factors into moral character determinations. And if you keep scrolling down, if you can go all the way down to the PTLS and LOS rules, I think it's a bit down. There's no changes there. Keep going. So as Devin's scrolling down, so you'll see, since we had to pull the rules from this agenda, we do plan to bring them in March. And Kareem, I think that's the one you were talking about, we're bringing, so both sets of rules. Oh.
Sorry. Yeah.
So for the practical training of law students and the law office study program. And so those were just the only updates we had for our group. So yeah, I can pass
Amy
it.
and I talked about on this third item, just taking the years out of the bar exams, so it just becomes generic and you don't have to change the years every year. Just say July and February in the big column, and then just say January and August in the one to the right. Less work for the future.
Okay, and I'll pass it to Amy and Cody if they have any changes for their groups.
Can you project your voice, Tara? It's,
Just
I am a little hard of hearing, but everyone, between the echoes from the speakers that aren't loud enough to cover your voice, and I'm probably not the only person, maybe the only one willing to admit it, that it's in a room this big with people speaking in their normal voices. The they can be hard to hear at the other end of the room.
Or you can be Alan.
Yeah, Alex, even you, Alex, sitting as close as we are, when you go low, becomes hard to hear you.
I'm a soft-spoken man.
Yeah, you just did it there. Yeah, thanks.
Is there an action for this, or?
Well,
we-
we're going to talk about each of
Oh,
the
I
areas.
thought okay.
Yeah, each of the areas. So in examinations and operations, I do have one addition that I'd like to, that we have a speaker that I would like to introduce. And so, Devin, do you mind bringing Chris Evans as a panelist? And so what this addition is, it's a proposal that's being presented to us, to the State Bar, to implement an extension of the Strategies and Stories program. So this initiative is different. It aims to improve bar applicants' test-taking experience and exam performance. Specifically, we have a researcher here from Stanford University. He's a PhD candidate. His name is Christopher Evans, and he'd like to provide bar exam applicants strategies to improve potential success on the California bar exam. The strategies stress mindset work and aim to improve well-being and focus on driving applicants to meet their peak performance psychologically and physically. So he's here with us today. As I mentioned, he's going to discuss his initiative and answer any questions that the committee may have about this work. This item is noted in the work plan, and we'd like the committee to weigh in on whether we should add this to this year's work plan. And this is, again, not to replace the positive mindset intervention, but in addition to that program. And so with that, I'm going to introduce Chris. Chris Evans is a social health psychologist and a PhD student at Stanford's Mind and Body Lab, where he explores transformative power of mindset on health, well-being, and performance. His research focuses on how we can change our mindsets with publications in journals such as the Experimental Psychology, Education Psychology, and Mindfulness. With a holistic vision, Chris blends scientific rigor with practical wisdom, leveraging his extensive experience in yoga and mindfulness to empower individuals across athletic, educational, and organizational domains. He's driven by a commitment to fostering a world where one can build a happy, healthy, and fulfilling life. And with that, I'd like to introduce Chris.
Mr. Evans?
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy, and hi, everyone. Is everything working? You can see me and my screen right now?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. Well, good morning. First, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about this project. It's aimed at exploring innovative ways to improve well-being and performance for people taking the bar exam. So you learned a little bit about me, but I just want to share, like many of you, I have different roles and identities. My father, it's a picture of my kids. They're a little bit bigger. I'm a Stanford grad where I was a student athlete, and I'm currently a PhD candidate where I'm studying how mindsets influence our reality across several different domains. And I've worked as a coach, a yoga teacher, and even spent some years playing professional poker. Now, I share this brief background because all of my experiences brought many lessons, but at the forefront of those lessons is the idea that what we think, what we believe matters. And this holds true across all domains of the human experience and has consequences for our health, our well-being, and performance. And I started to notice it early on in my college experience. I started to realize that maybe it wasn't as simple as talent or skills or even just knowledge being the only reason why people succeed. And this motivated a curiosity and a passion to dive deeper into the role our beliefs, or more specifically, our mindsets play in our lives. More importantly, I focus on how we can empower people to use, to change, or enhance them when it's helpful. And so I share that because at a high level, that's the focus of this project, of my research, and kind of how I approach it. Well, let me give you an idea of the project and what we're going to talk about for the next maybe 12, 13 minutes. So we'll talk about the challenges for law school students and professionals. We'll consider some potential solutions, particularly mindsets, and how we can enhance people's ability to recognize and use their mindsets to mitigate some of those challenges. And we'll finish up with the research methodology, followed by hopefully a short Q&A where we can dive into whatever comes up. So probably unsurprisingly, the majority of law school students cite stress as the major factor or impediment and challenge in their academic and professional experience. So stress ramps up immediately upon starting graduate school, and it persists into professional years. This stress includes and exacerbates high levels of anxiety, worry, loneliness, depression, substance abuse, and engaging in unhealthy behaviors. This might not be surprising because, I mean, anxiety is at its highest levels pretty much ever across the country. But this seems to be increased for people in law school and graduate school more generally. Basically, one perspective is that law school is the beginning of a negative cycle of degraded mental, emotional, physical health, and well-being. And all of these things stifle people from being the best versions of themselves. Now, stress is important and it's a heavily studied topic because it's linked to so many outcomes. Over the years, stress has been cited as a growing plague, an epidemic. It's linked with the 6 leading causes of death. And the World Health Organization even described it as America's #1 health problem. And across numerous studies, we see that stress and anxiety predict poorer performance across many areas, particularly high stakes areas. And this has been shown to even play out on the bar exam. So these struggles with anxiety and stress, they can debilitate focus, your memory, your ability to learn, to effectively self-regulate, and they stop people from performing at their full potential. Particularly first-generation students, primary caregivers, people who are from poor or working backgrounds, they often have to work while studying and are much more likely to experience greater stress, which erodes their performance. And this has nothing to do with their ability or potential as a lawyer, but of course, we don't do our jobs and prepare in a vacuum. So, for example, a young man who lives by himself and is trying to be a second-generation lawyer, he's much more likely to have adequate financial resources, much more likely to be able to devote time to studying effectively, having social and economic support that's necessary, and even cognitive resources that help him benefit from that study. And this is just, for example, compared to a first-generation mother who has kids and has to work and take care of those kids while preparing for the bar exam. The challenges between them are stark. So, in other words, the circumstances in which people find themselves in could be socially and structurally, they have a huge impact on performance. And these increased challenges, they can erode important psychological resources that have to do with their performance. And what we know is that stress disproportionately affects people from poor, underrepresented backgrounds, people from like low socioeconomic status, rural backgrounds. They're the first in their family to go to college, women, minorities. And this extra stress directly contributes to group-based disparities regarding passing the bar exam. So this is just a graph. We could spend forever. We won't dive too much into it, but this is just an example of some of the group-based disparities as a function of ethnicity. And of course, stress is just one of several factors that contribute to underperformance and underrepresentation, but it's a meaningful one, and it directly contributes to disparities in the legal profession. And in California, we see Some of the biggest disparities play out for people who identify as Latino. And of course, ethnicity isn't the only important aspect of representation, but we know that having more representation from all types of communities in law, it enhances community opportunity and access to a fair legal system and increases trust in the legal system, which is very important, particularly right now. So we know stress can erode health and well-being and performance, and that's the dominant perspective. It's probably not anything new to you. But if we're being honest, stress isn't always bad. In fact, it's an integral part of the human experience, beginning with birth. So even in the womb, babies are influenced by stress, and the birthing process is a highly stressful situation for everyone involved. Yet, it's also associated with greater purpose, joy, passion, growth, and meaning in life. But how can this be? Isn't stress always bad? Yeah, well, not necessarily. Stress also associated with improvements in health, well-being, and performance. Things like increased brain processing, focus, mental and physical toughness, enhanced immunity. An example of this is exercise and inoculation. So exercise stresses the body and in the process enhances psychophysiological processes. If you didn't know, exercise is like a secret weapon for enhancing the mind body. Receiving immunizations stresses the body. It exposes the body to particular pathogens that then allow the body to naturally respond and create a robust response that then protects us against future dangerous illness and outcomes. These are two aspects of stress that help us become more resilient. Now, I bring this up not to argue that stress is enhancing or deteriorating. It's just to point out that if we're balanced in assessing the literature, it's not inherently good or bad. Instead, the effects of stress are paradoxical. They can be debilitating and enhancing. So what might the distinguishing factor actually be? We like to think about it as our mindset. So maybe it isn't the stressor itself, but instead our beliefs about the stress, our stress mindsets, which reflect our expectations and interpretation of stressful events. So what is a mindset? You can think about it as a lens or a mental framework that influences how we perceive and interpret our experiences. They're meaning-making systems. They're composed of core assumptions, or particular expectations, motivations, and goals. Two well-established lines of mindset research are growth and stress mindset, which are established by my mentors and my collaborators for this project, actually, Dr. Carol Dweck and Dr. Aaliyah Crum. There's thousands of articles on these topics, but just to share a little bit, there's a rich kind of set of experimental or causal evidence that supports the notion that these mindsets shape our health, well-being, and performance across various domains. So in education, believing that intelligence is malleable versus static predicts greater academic motivation, mastery and enjoyment of learning, persistence, and even academic performance. Believing that stress can be enhancing is associated with improved health, vitality, and physiological responses and performance in areas such as education or other stressful work environments like military, police work, tech, and financial organizational settings. Importantly, stress mindset has also been linked with greater bar exam performance. So thanks to you and many other folks with the California bar exam, researchers have laid the groundwork in highlighting the significance of psychological approaches like mindsets to enhance performance. And so the motivation for this project is to build on that research and to test the role well-being plays in these relationships and whether or not we can enhance well-being and performance by providing a holistic mind-body mindset training. So we want to experimentally test whether or not we can use this enhanced digital mindset training to actually improve well-being and performance outcomes. And we'll randomize people to one of three groups. a control group, a mindset group, and a mindset plus mind-body training. The control group, they'll just respond to surveys during the bar exam preparation period, and this will provide a great comparison group, a baseline to look at the relationship between well-being and performance without intervening. And then we'll also have a stress mindset group. So this is so we can reproduce some of the past research and hopefully see some of the enhancements for performance, but we'll add several measures of well-being, measures of positive and negative emotions, measures of anxiety, measures of emotional resilience and flexibility, meaning and purpose. These are aspects of well-being that can certainly reflect and affect our performance. And so our third condition, though, will be our holistic mind and body training condition on top of the stress mindset training. And this holistic training basically uses yoga-based practices in a secular way to improve well-being and particularly improve people's ability to recognize and regulate their mindsets deliberately. In essence, these practices offer a variety of activities and behaviors that help people build important psychological resources that are associated with a variety of positive outcomes. So just to share some of those things, these practices are associated with improvements in critical areas related to learning, performance, and well-being. So things like improved focus, tension regulation, memory, greater self-regulation across cognitive, emotional, social, and behavioral spectrums, greater physiological health and well-being, things like cardiovascular and immunity. And basically, not only do these practices enhance physical flexibility and strength and mobility, but they also improve mental and emotional flexibility and resilience. So we want to test if this holistic mind-body training can synergistically improve mindset training. We have a all-star team from Stanford that have been sponsored by the WASC Human Performance Alliance. And basically their goal is to fund innovative research to optimize health and performance. Our experts are across clinical health, performance, and social psychology. And this research matters, and it's extremely challenging in the applied nature to it. And due to this challenge and the importance and the impact, I would love to get your support. So more than ever, people are realizing that their health and their well-being are essential parts of their lives, inside and outside of the organizational context. People are starting to recognize just how much their minds, their mental and emotional experiences contribute to their well-being and how they show up and perform. And our primary goal is to improve everyone's performance and well-being. We think that mindsets and holistic training can help us all tap into and build and reflect our best selves. But as a scientist, I like to take an empirical approach to testing and validating these ideas, and I need your help with that. But even with that said, this type of training and this research is so important and meaningful because it might be particularly beneficial for closing achievement gaps that exist for many of the underrepresented folks. I mean, these are folks who might greatly benefit from the training, but they're much less likely to even be exposed or engage in this type of training. People who are from low income or rural, first gen, non-traditional law paths and backgrounds, people who are working, people who are raising kids during their journey. And we want to support them as well. And supporting and prioritizing this research can help mitigate the challenges that people face and start to provide an environment to serve them in these processes. And in the process, we can learn a little bit more about the role well-being plays in these important life outcomes. And just to wrap things up, so in essence, the goal of this research really is to offer an experiential learning opportunity for people to actively train the mind, to start to build helpful psychological resources using holistic exercises that stimulate a host of benefits. This also includes improving people's ability to start to recognize and regulate their mindsets. And this project aligns very nicely with several initiatives already running, including the Stories and Retaker programs. It extends and builds on those programs, and there's no better time than now to start to provide this type of support for folks to be their best selves. So I'll end it with that, and maybe we'll have a question or two. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Chris. With that, I want to open it up, see if anybody has any questions, thoughts, or feedback for Chris.
This is Shema Mesiwala. I very much appreciated your presentation, Mr. Evans. I think many of us know that Dr. Dweck is a leader in the work of mindset. She wrote the pioneering book on that. We're very lucky that she is out of Stanford, which is in our backyard in California. I teach at UC Davis Law School in addition to being a justice on the Court of Appeal. And I see every day my students struggle with these same issues that you talked about. I think what excites me the most is that, as I understood your presentation, you're proposing an empirical study where we can scientifically look at a group of people who either get the training, a modified type of training, or a control group, so we can see how this affects different people who are test takers of the California bar. I just wanted to ask if there's anything I'm missing, but if it is what I think I heard you say, I'd like to tell my colleagues here that I would be in great favor of it. And again, I think we are so lucky to have someone who has been trained. It is being trained by Dr. Dweck, who is, I think, the #1 researcher in the world on this topic, leading this type of study. So thank you for your presentation. I think it would do our test takers a lot of good.
Appreciate your kind words and experience. I'd love to hear more about the students, because the deeper I get into this field, the more and more folks are reflecting just how you said that this is actually a big challenge for students and for people. And you're 100% right. I'm extremely grateful to have Carol pretty much in my back pocket to support and guide this research. And she's the #1 researcher on the field. And we also have the, I would say, #2, meaning Aaliyah Crum. They're basically the world leading experts in this field on mindsets regarding health and well-being performance. And so we're all kind of collaborating to extend this research to have an implied impact. We try to stay close at Stanford to, meaningful research. And the more I dove into this research after talking to some friends in grad school here, the more and more I was excited and intrigued, and also surprised at what the data is showing on not only the impact on mindsets, but like I said, health and well-being in this space. And it's a great opportunity to provide a more rigorous approach to investigating these things. So not just a study, we'll do an experimental study. So we'll have some hopefully causal, strong, rigorous evidence to support these ideas. And that's the fun too in that scientific endeavor and process, and to test what you think is actually happening and see if that actually bores out or not.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. I also wanted to add that I think for my colleagues as well, if the data bears it out and this type of training is beneficial to our law students, those obviously who pass the bar will be our next generation of lawyers. And I think the research also shows that there are so many lawyers who are dissatisfied in the profession. I think a lot of that is stress and failure to regulate that stress in the profession. And so if this type of modality is validated in terms of being beneficial to decrease that stress and improve that mindset, then these same students maybe can be tracked over time to see those of them who do pass the bar, how they fare as lawyers, and to see if they fare better in the profession in some ways on metrics of stress and anxiety in the profession.
I love that idea, a little longitudinal research, looking at some things over time, which, you're hitting on several things. One of the reasons why I wanted to choose this as a great point to intervene is not only the high stakes nature of the test, but because these are then folks who are moving into their profession, and we want to support them in the next generation and starting to provide some of the kind of social or environmental support for folks, so then they can say and reflect and say, you know what, maybe we should try to think about how we're educating our students, and what types of teaching and training goes into this process. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's the content that is necessary and the types of thinking, but there are also types of teaching and learning and behaving that can not only amplify our thinking and learning, but it can also start to improve our well-being throughout our entire life. And so what you're talking about is exactly why I'm choosing this time point to start to see how can we intervene at some point in time. Like, to be honest, the first year of law school would be great because this is actually where we see well-being go down, and we also see fixed mindsets start to occur and even more debilitating stress mindset. So that could be future work, as you're talking about. We can tie that into some of the longitudinal work to see, well, how do these professionals actually fare in their everyday life several years later? Because what we start to see from the mindset research is, yes, there's longitudinal effects. So long-term effects over time that play out in how we think, how we act, how we feel, how we behave, that have consequence across your life. And so the cool thing is you start to reflect and see where it resonates and how these things impact your life. And you can apply them across your social, your interpersonal life, your organizational life. They're human qualities and resources. And so I love the idea of looking at these things longitudinal. And the space is wide open. The space is so wide open, and it's necessary for us to start to dive into some of these effects, because more than ever, we're starting to see just how important folks who are serving through law, serving our communities through law are. And we're going to continue to see that. So I love being in this space. I would love to talk to you more even about those ideas. And I probably should have put my email on here. So if folks want to reach out, it's KRISE, Stanford.edu. You can also check us out at the Stanford Mind and Body Lab, Stanford.edu, if you're curious. I study mindsets across many different domains, by the way, but right now I'm zoned in and focused on this area.
All right. Any other questions, thoughts? Okay. Well,
I'm just going to add something. I think I'm very excited here. As these law students progress through their career, some of them will become professors, some of them will become partners in law firms, other will enter government work, some of them will become judges. And I would just note, because I'm in the judiciary, I think there's also a tremendous level of stress in the judiciary, right? And so I can imagine on this longitudinal study that I'm envisioning and very excited about, you can also see potentially the effects of this kind of training and how it can play out when certain students become, let's say, professors or judges, and see how it affects them on the bench and things like that. So I think it has a potential, the study has the potential to create data for decades, actually.
Yeah, I really do love that idea. And you're really talking about just how important and applied and impactful this type of research is. So there's really so many different ways to take it. But, in the UK, for example, there's research that is actually starting to see, well, what happens when we introduce some of these types of practice through, for example, judges, and the impact on their own thinking, their own positive emotions, their own openness, and their own objectivity, perceived objectivity, by the way. But there's these aspects of research that are starting to play out at multiple levels in the legal system to start to show that, hey, it's actually kind of across the board in which we might be able to benefit. Now, the unique ways in which it plays out, aka, some of those outcomes we could look at longitudinal, that's also the kind of curiosity and the fun and the joy of the science. And also, you start to just reveal just how these places can start to see, like I said, whether it's in your law, like whether it's in your personal life, learning how to regulate your mind and attention. Turns out that's helpful. Most people don't do it, by the way. And we're more than ever having our attention under onslaught from our phones, from news, media. Just in that in itself is beneficial. But as we introduce some of those other layers of when we start to train and recognize the role our mind and our emotions play in our experience, you start to be able to see, wow, these are components that are useful across spectrums. And so more than ever, I'm starting to really recognize how across social systems, across professions. We can see this and do this. I study this in the medical field as well. I've been working with athletes for a long time and seeing these things. And so we're starting to just start to expand, and hopefully I'll be a professor for a long time where I'll be able to do some of that work and we can collaborate some of that longitudinal research to investigate and even provide insights. I think this California is such on the cutting edge of this type of work and space. So kudos to all of you for the past research you've already done, which is like incredible, by the way. You supported. So I was tuned into that when it was first being published. And so now we want to share some of that research and work too, in this more objective and kind of rigorous way. But research is always building on it. So we're trying to build on it in positive, helpful, and applied ways. And thank you.
Okay. Well, if there are no more questions, Chris, thank you for your time. And
thank you.
Yes. And then we have
I'd like
other.
to ask just one question.
Oh, yeah. One more question, Chris.
Will you describe one of your research strategies? Just a very descriptive look at one of your research strategies.
When you say research strategy, do you mean like an approach that we would use in this specific way, or like some of my past research strategies, or?
The big strategy that you will use to resolve
Yeah.
the problem.
Yeah, so
Step by
one big
step. I want to hear it step by step.
Well, we have this digital type of training that has already been established. So imagine using your phone or your laptop and going through about an hour-long session where you're learning more about the impact of mindsets across several different domains and how they impact your health, well-being, and performance, and engaging in reflective activities that might help you consider how those mindsets might be playing out in your life. And so I use that kind of approach at a high level to look at mindsets, how they play out in our beliefs about exercise, and our beliefs about stress, and our beliefs about the malleability of our intelligence. And so why I'm sharing this is that I actually in the background take this kind of explicit or metacognitive route to help people rethink their thinking. So it turns out we have this capacity to recognize our mind, to monitor it, to understand how our beliefs might be affecting our perception. But having the space and time and training and practices that enhance that ability are often what people are missing. And so to be more specific, I train this capacity both through content and knowledge, but also through activities. So for example, I can tell you that exercise amplifies your well-being and performance, or we can go engage in some exercise together. They're both meaningful. And we also know our beliefs about your exercise, for example, happen. So in that holistic training, it's kind of that source. It's we can talk and we can sit and do the content stuff, but we're also providing actual activities and behaviors for people to engage in that then promote those type of enhancement of resources as opposed to just talking about them. And this includes practices, yoga-based practices, things like moving mindfully. If you've ever done that, could be walking, could be playing basketball, could be swimming. But it turns out learning how to move mindfully and bring the mind to the present moment is very restorative. And it's really healthy. And it's a practice that we really need to be doing and engaging more of. And so we do several different practices like moving through exercise, doing particular type of breath work practices that turns out they're simple, but it turns out they're really, really impactful. Hope that provide a little bit of insight.
Mr. Evans, this is the chair. By the way, thank you for the presentation. It's very enlightening. I certainly learned a lot about my physical body, mind, and soul. Now, one of the things that I'm considering now that I've seen your presentation is perhaps to enforce some kind of rule before the meeting to maybe, do some kind of warm up to get all my committee members active, right? You think this is a good idea? I want to make sure I have some.
We're second.
I want to make sure I have some sources of support. So, what, if anything, you could recommend? I mean, we're going to have a lunch break pretty soon, but I want to make sure we are always keeping our mind and body, active. And so, what would you recommend that the committee do?
Honestly, that's a great question. And I encourage you all to kind of test and play this out in your own life. So instead of just me listening, telling you to do something, experiment with it and see what happens. How do you show up when you do something and when you don't do something? What that something is, I would say you could, for example, hop on YouTube, do some chair yoga together, or some just light movement-based warm-up practices together. And the whole purpose is to get up and to mindfully move together, to mindfully breathe together, to learn how to bring the mind to the present moment. I mean, that's not abstract, by the way. I mean, you'd be surprised how often your mind is jumping to the future or spending time in the past. I mean, 50% of the time, most people are mind wandering, by the way. 50% of the time. And so learning how to tune in and pay attention to that and regulate and bring the mind right back, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Are you listening to a friend or a loved one? Are you engaging in teaching and learning? Are you focusing? Are you trying to prepare for the bar exam? Or are you at a bar committee meeting? All of these things, just learning how to get the mind tuned up and tuned in before that can help you show up in a present way that then unleashes kind of the magic, meaning you're going to be able to meet whatever comes up mindfully instead of being distracted, inattentive. And turns out you got to build that muscle. You got to practice and build that muscle, and it's malleable. And so do some chair yoga, get together and breathe together, and encourage yourself to, for example, put your phones away, the distractions where you can just be with the folks that are in your immediate environment, in your immediate moment. And then go meet whatever happens next. And turns out I'd be willing to bet if you practice that, try it a few times with it while doing that movement, try it a few times without doing it, and just notice, how am I showing up? How am I feeling? How's my body? Where's my attention? Do I even know what people are saying? What am I even thinking? All of these are kind of these processes that we're going through at every single moment, and you can start to tune into it and use it effectively, by the way. So thank you for your question. That exercise and the movement is always going to help people open up to. So being with clarity, emotionally, physically, and mentally. And who knows what happens as a result of that, by the way. That's the fun part of the journey and exploring that.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. We'll have a light workout after lunch, folks.
Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time and attention. And please do reach out if you have any additional questions, or I could talk about this stuff forever. So best of luck moving forward. And shout out to Amy. Thank you for including me for this conversation.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. So I know that there's another section to the work plan that we want to get to. Let me just highlight one more change. So the change in, again, back to examinations and also to operations, there's the potential addition of this initiative for the July 2025 California bar exam. And we also have, a presentation that happened at the last December meeting, which was the PT a drafting and development presentation. We have one coming in March on the EDGE team on the basics of essay development. We also have it in our parking lot items to go back and revisit in a couple of years the first year law student exam standard setting. So looking at the cut score, revisiting that given the format change. So those are the additions to the work plan. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Cody to talk about educational standards.
Great. Thank you so much, Amy. The work plan for the educational standards team really looks the same. So I guess just for the goal of being brief, I'll just highlight the one item that we've removed from the work plan and placed in our parking lot. So if we could just go to the bottom of the document, please. Okay. So the one item that has changed since we originally presented this at the December meeting is an assessment of the accredited law school rules adopted in 2022. I think our thinking around this is that this work should be done. It's been placed on this parking lot as an opportunity to keep the committee's focus on this topic, but considering the ongoing unaccredited law school rules effort, as well as the prioritization of the future bar exam efforts, we've decided to place this in a parking lot space so that it can be revisited when there's a more appropriate time and more capacity to focus on something this important. That's all from me. Thank you.
So I think we're opening this up for any thoughts or reactions to some of the changes in the work plan. Okay.
Mr. Kramer?
So Amy, in the current posted draft, I don't see the review of the first-year cut score. So is that something you're going to add?
Yes, I just
Okay,
noticed
thanks.
that fell off, so I will. All right. And what about thoughts on proceeding with the initiative presented by Mr. Evans?
I would be in favor of that and would happy to chair any work group on that.
Okay. All right.
I agree. We don't need, do we need to vote on that or not?
You know, we didn't set this up as an action item. I believe on the agenda, it is scheduled as a discussion of the work plan. But it's an action. I guess we are approving the item. Devin has a motion, so sorry about that. I stand corrected. So here's the motion, if somebody wants to act on that motion.
I will so move.
I'll second.
Oh, really, Mr. Lawrence?
I'll let you do it.
Let's do it together.
You guys are the Wonder Twins. You guys got it.
That's what Steve made.
Can we have two people seconding a motion? Any additional discussion or debates? Oh, I guess Mr. Ngora would be the person seconding the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any additional discussion? Hearing none, Devin, please take the honor.
Dr. Bolton? Yes. Dr. Cow?
Yes.
Kareem Gangora?
Yes.
Larry Kaplan?
Yes.
Paul Kramer?
Abstain.
Alex Lawrence?
Yes.
Esther Lynn? Justice Macy Walla?
Yes.
Bethany Peak? Ashley Silva Guzman? Judge Reyna?
Yes.
Vince Reyes? Alan Yokelson? Alex Chan?
Yes.
With 8 yeses and 0 nos, the motion passes.
Thank you. Amy, what else do we have on the work plan?
That's it. We're done with the work plan discussion.
Okay. Well, Audrey's not here.
Yes. So we're done with open session, minus the 1 p.m. Presentation by WASC. So at this point, we could either move into closed session or start a lunch break session. So
And then we still have half an hour until lunch, and so I think we should move into closed session for the sake of efficiency.
all right, sounds like a plan. So we will be moving to closed session. So we will post in open session that we are in closed session, and we'll come back to deliberate at, once we're done with closed session. Or actually, we'll be back at 1 p.m. for the WASC presentation, actually.
Right. So let's move into the closed session, and we'll adjourn the open session until 1 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, let us know when we are ready, and whether you will take attendance prior to starting the presentation.
Now that we're back from recess, Devin, can you take roll for us?
Dr. Bolton? Dr. Cow? Alex Chan?
Yes.
Kareem Gangora? Larry Kaplan? Paul Kramer?
Here.
Alex Lawrence?
Here.
Esther Lynn? Justice Masiwala? Bethany Peak? Ashley Silva Guzman?
Here.
Judge Reyna?
Here.
Vince Reyes? Alan Yokelson? We have a quorum.
Thank you, Devin. So we're going back to item 4.4, which is the presentation on institutional accreditation by representatives of WASC, Senior College and University Commission, which is set for 1 p.m. Your mic.
There you go. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Before we begin, I just wanted to provide everyone with a little bit of background as to why we're bringing Dr. Linda Peterson today to address you. As part of the accredited rules revision, the committee voted to add a jointly accredited option for schools. And now that the phase-in has been completed, we've been receiving those applications. The idea behind it is to allow those who have not only the programmatic accreditation of the State Bar, but also an institutional accreditation, to substitute some of that oversight for the committee's oversight when it is similar in nature. When the committee was deciding whether to do this, you received research from a number of institutional accreditors, and you also received a presentation from the president of WASC at that time, Dr. Jamie Ann Studley, who came from the Department of Education and also was an attorney herself. She has recently retired. There will be a new president soon. And so we have brought the individual that has the most law schools in her portfolio at the WASC division to speak with you about the current practices for oversight, not only for law schools, but in general for institutions, so that we can orient new members and refresh current members. So we've brought Dr. Linda Peterson. She is a vice president, and she has been for 8 years at WASC. Prior to that, she earned her PhD in education at the University of California at Berkeley. The focus of her studies was educational law. She's also worked in the legal office of the California Department of Education and held the position of state special education mediator. She's also had a career at UC Berkeley, where she held several research and administrative positions in education and policy. So we're very pleased to welcome Dr. Linda Peterson. And if Devin could recognize Dr. Peterson, we can go ahead and begin.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Thank you so much for inviting me to come here today to tell you a little bit about WASC, what we do in our accreditation processes. I think I have about 20 minutes to talk with you, and then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for questions. So if you could hold your questions till the end, I'd appreciate it. Yeah, that's the right slide. Thank you. So the things I'll be talking about today, I'll first provide you just a little bit of background about WASC, describe to you the standards and the criteria for review that we use when we're accrediting institutions. I'll give you a little bit of a flavor for what our accreditation visits are like. I think those are what you call inspections, if I understand it. We call them visits, accreditation visits. I'll tell you a bit about commission actions, what sorts of decisions the commission makes, and what we do in the way of regular monitoring of our institutions. Okay, next slide, please. So WASC is one of 7 institutional accreditors. In the past, we were regional accreditors. We covered only California, Hawaii, and the Pacific Islands. So most of our institutions are in those areas. However, a few years ago, that was changed, and we are now institutional accreditors, which means we can accredit institutions across the United States. And we also have international institutions. So we are, excuse me, we are recognized by the U.S. Department of Education, and we are federal financial aid gatekeepers. Currently, we have 215 accredited institutions and quite a few in the pipeline that are seeking accreditation with us. Next slide, please. So in terms of the types of institutions that are accredited by us, and we accredit a wide range of institutions, very small liberal arts colleges to the UCs, Cal States, faith-based institutions, health science institutions, and of course, law schools. So what we expect of our institutions are, that they are quality, they provide a quality education, that they are financially and educationally sustainable, which is very, very important. We keep a close look on their finances, especially in these days with so many schools struggling and with enrollments dropping and the like. We want to be sure that there's going to be a school there for students to complete their education. We have a heavy focus on student success, and in line with that, we're very data-driven. So our colleges and universities are expected to regularly generate data to evaluate it, and also to make public their student achievement data. So retention rates, graduation rates, licensure pass rates, of course, that would be bar pass rates for law schools. And also that they have a commitment to continuous improvement. And that's regardless of who you are. We're always giving requirements that require institutions to keep working on things to continually improve. Next slide. So we have 4 standards. And within those standards are 4 criteria for review. And those are the standards that our institutions must meet in order to be accredited by us. And I'm not going to go into great detail about the CFRs, but I'll give you a little bit of idea of what the standards are like. Next slide, please. Our first standard is around institutional mission and acting with integrity. So that's about purposes, what their mission is, whether they're abiding by that mission, and so forth. Integrity and transparency, that's in their interactions with students as well as with WASC. So we expect them to be very clear about the kind of education that they're offering, what the costs are, what the expected outcomes are, and so forth. Next slide. Our standard 2 is about educational objectives and student success. So that's around the degree programs. What is the quality of those programs? What do they do to monitor them? What's their curriculum like, and so forth. Faculty, who are their faculty? Are they qualified to be teaching what they're teaching? Student learning and performance. Again, we have student learning now. We expect student learning outcomes and regular program review and so forth. Then also student support. So what support services are available to students, both in their academic life, their co-curricular experiences. Okay, next slide, please. Standard 3 is about assuring resources and organizational structure. So we're looking at, again, at faculty, staff, and administrators. Are they adequately staffed? Are their faculty appropriately trained? Who are the administrators? Who are the staff? Also the financial, physical, technology, and information resources. So, do they have, particularly in this day and age, and especially with so many schools going online now, do they have appropriate technology to support that? These are some examples of what would be covered in these standards. So standard 4, next slide. And standard 4 is about quality assurance processes. So, and that's both academic and non-academic. So we expect institutions, as I've said before, to collect data, disaggregate data on student outcomes to determine what sorts of support students are needed. We look at what's their institutional research capacity. So do they have the capacity to collect data and make sense of it and use it? And again, this whole idea of institutional improvement. So when an institution collects data, analyzes it, then how do they use that to continually improve? Okay, next slide, please. And then we also have requirements that are in line with federal requirements. So we always review their credit hour policy, their marketing and recruitment, which I know you pay attention to as well. So for example, we're going to look at their website. We'll look at the admissions recruitment and admissions material. Are they being clear about what kind of an education can be expected there, what the costs are? I know you have a very specific statement about what needs to be said about what potential limitations there are in attending the CALs in particular. So we look at that as well. Is that very clear to students who are applying? We look at their student complaints review policy. We'll look at that policy. We'll also look at how do students know how to file a complaint? How are complaints handled? What sorts of records of those are kept, and how are they resolved? And then there's a transfer credit review policy as well for schools that do accept transfer credit. Next slide, please. So in terms of our visits, or I believe what you call inspections, this is generally this is a general idea of what our visits are like. We take a team of 5 peer reviewers. They are peer reviewers, they're volunteers, primarily from our membership, very highly trained. We train them. We have required training for them that prepares them for these accreditation visits. They're accompanied by a vice president like myself to assist with the process and so forth. Those peer reviewers they meet several times before the actual visit. They review the institutional report. Every institution needs to submit a report that is, 50 to 75 pages and with a lot of supporting evidence. So they review all that. They work very hard, I have to say. They review all of that. Once the visit comes along, they spend 2 full days on campus. They essentially arrive on a Tuesday. They meet Tuesday afternoon to prepare. They're 2 full days on campus, and then there's an exit meeting on Friday. The meetings are kind of standard meetings, are of course with the leadership. We'll always meet with the president, CEO, dean, any key personnel. We always meet with the board. We'll meet with folks who are connected with educational effectiveness. So, people who are doing program review, institutional research, and so forth. We always meet with finance. That would be typically their CFO and then any supporting staff. We have there are open meetings that we have with faculty, with staff, and with students. And those are, of course, private. We sometimes meet with committees and with whomever else may be appropriate. We also have a confidential email address where any of the stakeholders can submit comments during the review. Okay, next slide, please. So the team that goes in to review these institutions, actually, they make recommendations to the commission. It's only the commission that makes decisions. And typically the decisions that they need to make are how many years they will have until their next reaffirmation. And that is 6, 8, or 10. New institutions almost always get 6 years because, of course, we want to, they're still in development stages. We want to keep an eye on them. A lot of schools, I would say a bulk of the schools get 8 years, and some will get 10. The only schools that get 10 years are they really sound, they're financially sound, they have good student outcomes, they don't have any major issues, they're educationally sustainable and so forth, they have good programs. And then in addition to deciding on how many years an institution will get, they also get requirements. So there will be several requirements listed that are tied to our CFRs. And those are the areas that they are expected to work on in preparation for their next interaction with us. There's also the possibility of what we would call follow-ons. So they would be, and in most cases these days, I would say most institutions get some sort of a follow-on. So it's not just that broad 6, 8, or 10 years. Somewhere along the line, they'll be expected to submit a report, progress report, or an interim report. And then in some cases, there will be a special visit scheduled. So there will actually be another team of peer reviewers who will have a special visit. Sometimes that's in person on the ground, if that seems to be important, or it can be done, remotely on Zoom. The commission also has the option of issuing a notice of concern or sanctions. Of course, a notice of concern is just that. It's, it's a message to the institution that if they continue on the path they're on, they're likely about to stop meeting one or more of our standards. And then there are sanctions, warning, probation, show cause, and so forth. And ultimately, accreditation could be revoked. Next slide, please. So in addition to that, in addition to these visits, the possible reports they need to make in the interim, we require an annual, what we call an annual report from every one of our institutions. It's not really a written report, it's actually a report of data. So they'll be reporting things like enrollment and finances. Those are two key things. In addition, we couple that with data that we pull from IPEDS, the national data source. Most of our institutions report to IPEDS because they're required to if they offer federal financial aid. So we pull those data, we take those data, the ones from the annual report, and then a couple of years ago, we've created what we call the Key Indicator Dashboard, or the KID. And I'm going to show you that just here in a minute toward the end, at the end. And then we also do annual institutional monitoring, or AIM. And that is where we sit down as a staff and review every one of our institutions, and particularly key areas, again, finances, enrollment, anything else that's going on with the institution. And as a result of that, if we see something that causes us concern, we will follow up with that with the institution. If we have staff has the authority to request a special visit, for example, if there's something serious going on. So there's always this monitoring going on. We keep we're lucky as an institutional accreditor that the vice presidents have rather small portfolios of institutions so that we can really keep an eye on them. So as I was saying, we collect our data and it's now appears in our key indicator dashboard. Next slide, please. And on our dashboard, and this is public on our website, you can go to our website and look at any school that's in our membership, and you will see these kinds of data. There's data on the institution. There's data on student completion rates for that school. So retention, graduation, so forth. Things about student finances, how big are their loans when they graduate? Standard institutional finances. And it's over, these are all over several years, so you can kind of see trends as well. Post-grad outcomes, that would include employment, of course, we'll get bar pass rates in the case of law schools. And that's all on our website as well. We do peer benchmarking, so on most of the data that appears, there's also an opportunity to see how they compare to a subset of peers that are like institutions, or how they compare to the WASC membership in general. Excuse me. Next slide. And this is just this is a screenshot of what you would see on our website. This is just one page. You can see across the top there are multiple data sources that you can look at, their trends, as I indicated, and that's available to the public. So we are, I believe, still the only institutional accreditor that actually publishes on our website all of our team reports, the team report that comes out of a visit. as well as the commission action letters. So those are all there for every school that we accredit as well, available to the public. Okay, I think I'm right on time here. Next slide. So I'll just take a few questions if you have any.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Two questions, maybe follow-ups. So I understand that a major benefit of being WASC accredited or accredited by a similar accreditor is the school students can obtain federally insured student loans, which makes them more available to them and perhaps reduces the cost. When we spoke in preparation for this meeting, another benefit you mentioned was just the sort of the status, an enhanced perceived status for the school by virtue of its being accredited by an organization such as yours. Are there any other reasons why a school would want to obtain your accreditation, benefits to them, in other words?
Well, I think, yeah, well, when I'm asked that question, I always think of, we have some international institutions. And so it's always interesting to me to talk with them and say, why do you want WASC? Why do you want to jump through all these hoops, right, to get WASC accreditation? And I think this is true for institutions in the United States as well. But, you know, in addition, it's a recognition, definitely a recognition of quality. It opens it doesn't even open the door for financial aid for internationals, but they still want it. It's also the school is then recognized by other schools. So for transfer or enrollment in graduate school and so forth, having an education at a school accredited by us kind of guarantees that will happen for them. So that's another advantage. Schools, you know, I have a number of schools that will say that they want to improve, and the opportunity to work with us and to interact with other WASC accredited institutions and to get feedback from our peer reviewers provides that opportunity for them. They really genuinely just want to get better. So I think that probably captures the benefits.
Thanks. And then my other question. Who's that?
No, I think that's Echo, probably.
Okay, well, I've got one more. So then we'll go on to the next person. Your standards overlap ours in many ways, but they don't, they won't include any specific standards we have that are not a part of your set. And my understanding is you do not inspect against our standards, just against your own, and to the extent they overlap, well, our goal of making sure that our standards are met is achieved. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so just for the group then, back when we were working on the revisions to the accredited rules, and we created this animal called jointly accredited status, in the back of my mind, I was and I remain concerned about whether some of our requirements may fall through the cracks, because when you are jointly accredited, you will no longer be regularly inspected by the state bar. So I just want to highlight for the members that we need to keep in mind this difference, and to the extent we need to make sure we're aware of problems that WASC would not discover or try to mitigate. We will be looking at, or should be looking at, things like placing various requirements in our annual reporting system so that we can find these things on our own. It's a work in progress, and I think we will learn probably by an occasional misstep, but that's just the way these sort of programs work. But I think the benefit to the schools is useful and important from getting WASC accreditation or something similar. We'll just have to be vigilant to make sure that all of our standards that we believe in are also continue to be tested and enforced. Thank you.
Yeah, I would add to that when we put together these teams that visit the schools, it's done very, very carefully with a lot of thought. The team members typically we'll always have a finance person, we'll always have someone about student effectiveness. There's sort of certain expertise we're looking for. When I put together a team for a law school, I always have at least one representative who knows legal education. And I shoot for two. So at least we have people there who understand what is important to you. No, we don't assess them directly by your standards, but there are people who understand what's important in a legal education.
Yeah. For instance, we have a requirement for the contents of a law library, and I would imagine that's not really something you look at in any level of depth.
Well, we look at we look at their library resources. Yes, we do. I can't say specifically law, but of course, that's what the lawyers are looking for when they're.
And listening to you again today, I'm impressed that I think your level of your intensity of analysis in many areas, perhaps finances, perhaps even outcomes, is perhaps more than what we regularly do. So, and that's all to the good.
Mr. Ngora?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I had a question on one of your slides. You talked about student complaints. So I guess what is the process for evaluating and how does that impact the accreditation process?
Well, what a team will look at, we look at first their complaint policy. Then we will, it depends on the school, but we'll look at their policy. We'll look at, so for example, we'll ask students, if you have a problem, do you know what to do? So we explore that with them. But then we're also looking at, how are those complaints taken in? How are they handled? How are they resolved? How do you keep records of those? So that would be what we would do relative to complaints. We also have, WASC also has, if a student wanted to make a specific complaint to WASC, they can do that outside of the accreditation process. They can do that. There is that we entertain complaints that suggest some violation of a standard. That's all we do. We don't handle complaints if they don't like the grade they got in a particular class or that kind of thing. But so there is that opportunity as well.
So to your recollection, have you had an incident where a student complaint impacted your a school's accreditation status?
I don't know that I can answer that. I personally have not had that happen. I mean, I've certainly had. So as I mentioned, we have this confidential email account too that people can write into. And if issues arise from that, particularly if there's a pattern, if it looks like there are multiple people, we will definitely explore that. The team will explore that. Certainly if there's a serious complaint, I'm sure there are instances of that. I haven't personally experienced it, but we will take that seriously and look into it. So I don't know that I can't think of any instance where someone lost accreditation, from a student complaint, but I don't know our entire record of that.
Yeah, within my tenure here on the board, we've had situations similar where it's impacted, and definitely just want you to be mindful of that. We're dealing with a really unique set of publicly engaged members, but then also the institutions have a duty and responsibility too. So obviously I know you're going to take this seriously, but with our little world that we have, we really, really want to make sure we're listening and that we're aware of all those issues that arise at the site level. So thank you. I appreciate your responses. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional discussion? Hearing none, thank you so much, Ms. Peterson, for coming to speak with us.
My pleasure.
I just want to make a brief statement. I have served on WASC, and from what I see today, there's tremendous improvement. And I think it's sufficiently comprehensive to investigate and give accreditation to any school or university at this time. It will work for any university. Before this time, I could not say that, but I can say it today. This is sufficiently comprehensive for investigation and accreditation.
Thank you, Dr. Bowden. No, we haven't. Have we? Okay, well, thank you. Right. Then I think this is it for the open session. Without further ado, I guess we will now go back into the closed session and we will resume upon completing our business agenda, but a closed session. We're now in recess. Thank you all. We have just completed our closed session and we're now back into our open session. Our business meeting has now concluded. Is there any more business that we should discuss today, members of the committee? Hearing none, today's meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone.